And we are now live. All right, so here we are with episode 3 of GM Party. You can see our nice, lovely logo right here. I'll do my Vanna White impersonation. Um, so, yeah, the big budget show we got here. GM Party is the game makers party, and this is where game developers talk about projects that they're working on and problems that they run into, and we try to help each other out, sort of like a peer support group. And there's our Matt. How's everything running there, Matt? You all
Great.
good? Okay, cool. All right. So I'm going to start off with my whiz bang new idea while everybody gets situated. Roughly speaking, this all started because of a tweet I heard like 2 months ago. And somebody posted in response to a one-shot episode, there needs to be more games that have a cut to conventional mechanic. So I thought, he's right. He was right. Definitely right. So how could I make that work? Well, I came up with this one idea called the villain's monologue. So the idea is that you do sort of a round robin, light role playing experience where everybody takes turns being a villain, and everybody else takes turn ends up being playing the part of the minions of that villain. And you, as a villain, you're talking about your what you're doing. So you can use you've kidnapped. I'm just going to read this out because I wrote this down. So one player takes an active voice talking about plans for world domination, terms for surrender, etc., etc. In all cases, the villain is talking to the hero who is currently captured on a live feed or similar. So everything said is in character in public. So the minions, hirelings, whatever, will constantly interrupt with awkward truths, new knowledge that interferes with the plans, or accidents that happened or are happening right now. So that's sort of the concept. We've got we have a minion right there. Oh, 2 minions. There we go.
No, it's the same one. You just put a lap around my laptop.
That's pretty much the core of the idea. It's pretty much at brainstorming stage right now. So what do you guys think about that so far?
We were just talking about it, so I like the idea, and yeah, I like the concept of people like cutting in with detrimental news. Like I was saying, it could have something to do with like a card system to give people prompts. That's the only thing that I would wonder about, is just seeing people coming up with ideas. I would like it, or I would think it would be kind of more creative to, give people their own prompts.
Yeah, I was thinking of cards to go along with it as sort of helper things, but going off book, I certainly want to support as well.
Yeah.
I think that would be like going off book would be awesome, but I think it would be like an expert level,
exactly. Yeah.
Advanced play, where it turns into more like dastardly improv, right? Where it's like, okay, give me like a place and a thing and a time, okay, and then now from the audience or randomly every 5 minutes or whatever, we're gonna spit in something else. That's the opposite.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or you can even time it where you just go like, everybody say there's like 5 people playing, and it's like, okay, every third person, gets as soon as the third person goes, then the next person says the interfering thing at that point, and then you can just kind of like, give everybody like everybody gets a chance to kind of go around, and then suddenly then they can interject at specific time intervals or whatever.
Well, Penny for My Thoughts had a nice system where they had sort of. Actually, no, this was Munchausen. Had a system where you gave tokens when you wanted to challenge somebody. So having a token system to sort of give people incentive to challenge and be challenged could work well.
That's true. So at the end of the night, would you want to be the one with the most tokens, or is it even that kind of a game?
That's what Munchausen did, but I found that in practice, that score didn't really seem to be reflective of much of anything. It's not so much about, for me, playing Munchausen, it's not so much about getting coins as telling the stories.
Right.
But
yeah, the one thing that I was thinking of was with that Once Upon a Time card game is just the concept of having objects in your hand or like things in your hand that if he brings up something, you'd be able to like say like, oh, I have the card and therefore I can interrupt him and then it would be like my turn or something like that. But
right, you need like a limited number of cards, I feel, because then you would you don't want to be the guy, like you don't want to have a deck of say 20 or 30 cards and nobody draws the interrupting card, so everybody's just like, okay, go on. Oh, there's my trigger, although maybe the challenge is like, can you go on, like as much, maybe some people can like, I mean, that's the big thing about the monologue, right, is villains will monologue for an hour if you let them, the best villains will, can you monologue for an hour, can you, and not just repeat the same thing that you had to monologue last time or whatever,
Yeah, and that's what Once Upon a Time was about, is basically, I think if they're general enough, it comes up pretty often. Like in Once Upon a Time, you're supposed to come up with your own story, and basically you tell it as long as you can until you reach somebody. You're trying to hit cards in your hand, and if you mention another topic that somebody else has the cards for, they put down their card and they take over the story. And so they're really generic cards like forest or something. So if you bring up a forest, they'd be able to play it and take over the story type of thing.
In the case of Once Upon a Time, you're trying to drive towards your own particular happy ending. So if you have control over the story, you can direct the story towards your end. I like the idea of the villain having control over the story, but people screw with the story. Like the minions say, actually, this happened, or sorry, boss, I screwed that up, or
the big thing
the hero got away, or whatever.
The big thing that always happens with the monologue is that they always prevent the villain from succeeding, right? Like, no matter what, in every story where a villain monologues, it always ends up with, they're too busy thinking about their plans and they don't see the hole they fell into, or, they're too busy doing this and they don't see that the heroes have escaped their bonds, or, whatever like that. So it might be interesting, some kind of way to tie that sort of thing in, like a distraction sort of thing.
Yeah, actually, that gives me an idea about the cards. So I was thinking the card could be something like general things like accident or knowledge, or like very vague events that happened. But having that aspect of things might help, but I'm not sure. Maybe it's something as simple as having a very limited hand for the minions. Like you literally draw one card each or something like that. And this is what you have to do. And how do you bring it up in a way that doesn't make the villain angry at you or something like that? You know, shoot the messenger kind of deal.
I like the idea. I don't know why, but I just suddenly had an idea where it was like villains at like, almost like kid villains kind of,
Yeah,
and
yes.
they're at the
Corporate commander.
speech day, right? Like at school kind of thing. And so they're all competing for like a trophy, but they all have to but everybody has like a limited deck of like, say, 5 distraction cards, right? So the distraction cards are like a word. So when you go, you have to end the game with at least one card or whatever. Person who ends the game with one card wins. And what you do is like, okay, on my turn, Greg's going really well with his thing. I'm gonna like interject with a word or like a 2-word phrase or something like that, and then I just slip that to Greg to try to like throw you off course. And then now you're like, I have.
So
to,
you have to work that word into your.
Yeah, and it's because I want to win the spelling or the speech competition. And then if you falter, everybody else can go, oh, like, or some kind of way for everybody to go, no, you were stymied. So then the person who gave you the card takes over, and then everybody else can like use their cards to try to interrupt you. And then in the end, you want to be the villain who takes over the world with the best monologue. And everybody else wants you to fail because they want to win. And you slip in, like, you do that distraction thing, like we said before. They always get distracted, and then they're like, "Oh God, like, I don't know how to put railroad into this," And you can always do that thing where, you play games like, what's a game? Play like a fast game, like I'm going to say something even dumb like Pictionary, right? Something like that where you're drawing something and you get like a phrase, and it's like, I don't even know, like open. I don't know, say that's the word, open. And you always get that point where another player goes like, oh my God, I don't know how to draw this, or oh my God, I don't know what to do with this, right? And and you're always like, well, just go, just do something, But in this game, the minute somebody just goes like, oh, like they are clearly stymied or, clearly interrupted, everybody else, if there's like, maybe 2 other people who go, you're totally interrupted, you're paused, then you're out, then the next person goes. As soon as you can detect that like brief, like, their eyes kind of roll back and they're not able to keep going.
Like a couple of beats. Like,
yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very interesting. That's worth playing around with.
Mm-hmm.
I really want to capture the aspect of the minions screwing up, though.
Yeah.
I like the idea because they always screw up, right?
Yeah, they do.
And it's never the villain's fault.
No.
Even when it is, it's not his fault. But yeah.
Look at you. I wonder how you could do that. Get the villains, get the minions involved. Because like having the other players as the minions. Maybe you're playing like an asymmetrical game. Maybe it's like you have the villain whose goal is to tell an amazing tale, and the minions' goal is to like not get beaten up or something like that. So the minions have to like, they have to, I don't know, basically.
Oh yeah. So the minions are fighting the heroes.
Yeah.
The villain doesn't really fight the heroes. The villain is the mastermind, right?
Right.
So the minions have to figure out how to avoid working, but make it the fault of the heroes and not their own incompetence or something like that.
Right.
You could almost do like a pass the buck type of thing, where instead of a minion saying he screwed up, you can still say it's something where you're trying not to get beat up, but you're still trying to blame problems on other people. So you could like play your card of an event that happened, but then blame it on another minion.
Right.
And then they have to come up with a reason why it wasn't their fault, it was somebody else's fault. And
Right.
whoever it ends up with is the one who gets like the point taken away or whatever.
That's it. The other player, like the minions, are just like competing to be the best liar.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
It's him. You know, it's like a classic cartoon where there's two guys and you have to shoot one of them. You know, so you have to ask one of them the question, and they both give you a weird answer. It's the same sort of thing. Like the villain has to like either eliminate somebody or do something to deal with that, and then at the same time, it might be interesting if the villain has like they have their goal, but then towards that goal they have like support points kind of thing, and so they need minions to go out and do their jobs so they can give the villain support points so that they win. But as the villain gets mad and gets rid of their minions or does something to minions, the minions lose those support points, so they lose their own ability to keep going. It's one of the things I always wonder about those shows or movies where with the villains. When the villains like kick their own minion or they kill their minions, it's like, dude, you have one less guy to help you up. You know? And you always think like, you know, how do they get the job, continue to get the job done? You know, and eventually villains always seem to work through their HR, right? They work through their personnel until eventually they're the last one who has to take everything into their own hands, you know?
Right.
Because everyone around them is incompetent when it's really a reflection of themselves.
Right. Yeah, I wonder if the cards that are used as distraction cards could double up as like pass the buck blame cards, so they could be used in multiple different ways.
What if they
yeah.
What if the minions get 3 strikes, and when their 3 strikes are done, they're out, and so they're like, okay, I have 3 strikes, I can like take a strike, like, oh shoot, I screwed up. The villain's like, one of your strikes is gone. But then as they get down, they can like pass the buck to another minion and try to like make sure that they're still in the final domination plan or whatever it's going to be. You know what I mean? And then when they get 3 strikes, they're out. So and the buck passing can give them a bye, right, for that strike that they're about to receive.
Mm-hmm. I like the idea. I'm just not a huge fan of elimination style games.
Yeah.
So maybe if a minion gets knocked out, they take on a different role. Simply, they become a hero or something like that, and then they start throwing stuff at the other minions or the other or the villain or something like that. In this case, then that means that the villain more or less becomes the judge for the round. And this becomes a judge game.
What if the minions become the heroes? Like, if you think about it, between the villain and the heroes are minions, right? And as one minion dies or is removed, the hero gets one step closer.
Right.
So so that way, when they're removed, like you don't want to get rid of them, but you have to get rid of them. And then now the heroes come in, and the heroes have the ability to like now the heroes start interrupting the villain's plan more, right? They start interrupting their speech more, or whatever that's going to be. That can be a cool like one of the things I really like with the game Cthulhu Dice is that when you're out of the game, you're still in the game, right? But you now work for Cthulhu, right? It's a super simple concept. Like no one ever gets out of the game until the very end when one person wins. And I like that where it's like, okay, you know, this guy's been eliminated, but you want to eliminate your opponents, you know, or whatever in Cthulhu Dice, but every time you eliminate an opponent, it brings you one step closer to losing the game. And something like that would be cool with the hero as well.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Switching the minions to the heroes, giving them different abilities and allowing them to influence the story in different ways than what they were able to do before. I think that's pretty strong.
I was also just thinking about what you were saying before about like how many minions can the guy have, and I was thinking you could also have like the minions, you could have like a deck of different types of minions with their own specific like advantages or something, and the evil guy could pick his spread of minions specifically for whatever his plan is.
Oh yeah.
And then you can say things like, well, he's got to get rid of these minions, and so he just like picks some guy. Well, like I'm gonna kill Bob because it was his fault, and then later on somehow you could find out that like, oh, but Bob was the guy that knew how to use poison, and now you're trying to poison something, but you don't have Bob anymore, type of thing. So that could also be something that comes into play.
I also think that the minions, like if we do like a card object, we have the minions on one side, and literally you flip them over, and on the other side is the hero that they become.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mix and match as much, but you could definitely make it so that there's a strong association between like Mr. Freeze and Johnny Flame or whatever.
Yeah, I like that idea a lot. I like the flipping into cards. The other thing I thought would be that the villain might have like a meter, like fury points or something like that. And every time something bad happens, they get a fury point, which kind of makes them have to. Because I keep thinking like, what would be the reason? What would be the mechanic that would cause the villain to get rid of his minions? Right? Like in a perfect world, you just wouldn't do that. You know, so like, what would be that? Right? So some sort of thing where it's like a meter, and every time the minion screwed up, it like added a point to this meter. The villain was like, okay, now I have to react in a specific way, like give somebody a strike, or you know, they shuffle the card into the deck and they draw a different card, or whatever it's gonna, you know what I mean, that kind of thing. And then eventually, the villain wants to keep that fury meter down, or whatever, so that they can still win the game by the time they, you know, lose their mind.
I'm still stuck on the idea of playing the game in rounds so that you have multiple, like everybody has a chance to be a villain.
Right.
In which case, I'd want a shorter experience. I'm not totally decided on that, but I'd like to explore that. To that end, having it sort of like basically you vote off the worst minion at every sequence. So you know, it's always like you're competing with 3 minions, and then it's 2 minions and a hero, and then 1 minion and 2 heroes, and then you're done. So the last sequence might be, does the minion become the hero, or does the minion become the next villain?
Mm-hmm.
Might be an interesting final round.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
Then the villains can be promoted, or minion promotion.
Sure.
I'm just also thinking, because I'm trying to think of how other ways you could do, because if you want everybody to be able to be the villain, thinking of other ways you can do everybody getting a chance to be the villain. And I was just thinking of something where it's, instead of it being one villain, it's kind of like a newscast of like every player is their own villain trying to do their own specific thing. And so now you, instead of it being versus minions or something, you can have it where they're all competing against each other to be the baddest, and you can still have them throwing wrenches in each other's plans based on minions.
Right.
But that way it can be like a constant, everybody's still the villain. They all have their own turn to say something, but they're all trying to be the baddest type of thing, or something like that.
That would be really funny, actually. So you have like 3 players, or 5, however many players, 5 players, whatever. And in the middle of the table is like, it's like a cardboard, you know, a box with a lid off of it, and it's like a Channel 5 news van. Like, it's actually designed to look like that, and it's got a ton of cards in it. And so everybody as a villain is trying to like, okay, here's my thing, right? But these this Channel 5, they're really good investigative reporters, you know, so you have to like draw a card, and now the card says like, this is what they've discovered about your plan or whatever, you know.
Interesting.
And then you have to like deal with that, right? And then everybody on their turn as they go around, everybody's like, okay, so here's my plans. I have to get like do these 5 things. But you every turn you draw a card, and you're like, oh god, okay, they found it about, you know, and you know, you say like what your plan is right away. Like everybody can come up with their own plan. So it's totally free that way. There's no card to tell you what your plan is. Your plan has to somehow involve like a dastardly deed, right? So mine might be, my plan is to steal all of the money from the Girl Guides cookie drive. That's my evil plan. So it's like, okay, so on my turn I draw a card, and it's so I start telling you, here's how I'm going to do this, and here's all the things I got set up, and you know, and then I draw a card, and it's like they've discovered the horses, you know, and you're like, oh god, like okay, the horses, and here's what the horses are, and now you know what it's going to be. And if you can't work with what they've discovered, you know, then it goes to the next person, or it goes back to that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's really strong. I like that.
Yeah, I like that idea too.
And then the off turn villains would be the investigative news team.
Yeah,
and they can draw those cards and throw them at the player. Like, we just found this. How do you explain this?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, and I like the idea of being like objects that you don't even know that are coming. Like, oh, the horses, and you're like, well, wait, what does horses have to do with hacking the central computer system?
Of course, you found the horses, because you're never wrong. But of course you found the horses, and I'm glad you discovered the horses, because now I get to tell you exactly how these fit into my evil plan.
That's right. That's exactly right.
That's awesome. I love that. I love that. Okay.
Found my horses. They are Cheval 2.0, the custom software that I've written to overwrite the, you know what I mean? Like, whatever it is, it's like, you're in. Like,
all sorts of things. Like,
it could be anything, right? Like, I like that idea a lot. I think it's
I think it's super strong. I love it.
It's also simple. Like, it's just one thing of cards, you know, and like it's not like you don't have a bunch of different kind of like 3 or 4 different roles and stuff. It's just like something you could just, I don't know what you would call it, but just like imagine the Channel 5 van pulls up in front. It's like, okay.
What about the horse?
Yeah, what about the horse? Yeah. Or, you know,
how are you dealing with the birthday presents?
That's right. Oh yeah, right. Like, you know, and they're just random things. Like, they can't, not things like, you know, like a weapons cache or something like that. It's things like macrame or things, you know what I mean? Like,
it's a little bit like, what's the game? Machine of Death.
No, I don't know that game.
It's sort of it predicts the future, but it gives you a bunch of random cards, and you have to figure out how to use these random cards to kill someone, basically, because you're an assassin that's trying to. It's interesting, but it's the same kind of idea, is that you're given these prediction things, but I like having to change your story as you go, and new information gets thrown at you by the investigative news team that somehow figures out everything.
That's right. Well, yeah, that's the whole, like, their whole thing is just like, you know, or it could be something like Interpol, or, you know, I like the idea though of the, you know, I see it as like a bad villain against Ron Burgundy somehow. You know what I mean? Like some sort of villain who's got like delusions of grandeur.
Dr. Evil versus Ron Burgundy.
That's exactly what I think, right? And it's just like that's basically the concept that I keep seeing in my head, where it's, you know, okay, well, I'm going to do this when I've got, like I said before, the Girl Guide thing. Okay, well, you know, how do you explain? Like we said, the horse, you know, it's like somebody like Ron Burgundy would come up with a question like that, right? Where it's just like, this is what I've uncovered. It's something completely random that has nothing to do with like dastardly deeds or world domination or you know, embezzling or any kind of like whatever you think you would be doing. It's just like, I found those pink socks with the snowflakes on them. Explain yourself, you know, and you're like, oh god, like, you know, and then you have to somehow explain it, right?
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love it.
And I like the improv nature of it too. Like it has everybody on their feet, and then it's hilarious, right? Because when somebody says something, and if somebody can work something back into the story, it's like, oh my god, like that's so well done, like, sometimes your friends would blow your mind with the stuff they come up with.
Yeah, that's amazing. I definitely have to do this up. I think that it might be interesting to play around with hand size for whoever's the investigative news team, where they have either only one card or a limited number of cards or shared pool. I'll play around with that, but I think that'll come up in playtesting. That's very cool. I love it. All right. I think that's good for me. How about you guys? Who wants to take a crack at things?
I can go, sure. So, well, we covered this in a previous GM party, but still talking about the heist idea. Basically, I haven't gotten extremely far in any sense. I'm still kind of trying to figure out the general process of how things will go. One of the things I've been just trying to decide on is that I can't decide what I would like the game to be, as far as, like, I originally was thinking of an RPG when we talked about it last time. To me anyways, it almost fit better into sort of a card game, less RPG. If any RPG at all, it would be very casual, which I'm fine with. I almost like that better. I just feel like it might be it gets more into balancing mechanics then, rather than RPGs. You can kind of let people decide things on their own. But in any sense, I don't know. I feel like I'd be more interested in a sort of card game. The one thing I wanted. Sorry.
One thing I wanted to bring up is, since last game, I thought of One Last Job might be something that you might want to take a look at. It's a heist RPG.
Yeah, I feel like somebody pointed that out to me, or I found it.
Okay.
But I don't remember much or anything about it right now. But
yeah, I haven't played it, but I'm pretty sure I have it.
Sounds familiar, at least.
Yeah, but it might give you some ideas. But I think the card game idea could be very strong.
I like the idea because it'd be quick, like the villain game. I like the idea of quick and dirty, and I feel like this concept of having a heist and how it falls apart is more along lines of humor, which is less about role playing and more about just giving you funny reasons that things screw up or fall apart.
Honestly, like, I really think that there needs to be on the market right now more games that are the game to play after you get really, really sick of Cards Against Humanity. Because that game is just, I don't know. You play it once and you feel like the worst human being. It's like, I don't want to play this anymore.
Yeah, I feel it's like it's the simplest form of humor. Like, it's just shock value, funny the first time you hear some of the things, and then it just gets old.
The great thing that it has, though, in terms of the same thing that the villain game, and then this kind of one as a card game thing does. The one thing that I do like about it, I'm not a big fan of it, but the thing that I do like about it is, especially compared when I think of when you're saying before the RPG thing, like it's a lot easier for people to just like sit down with some cards and just read some cards and then play a game. You know what I mean? Then okay, I need to look at page 6 or page 7 and the table on page 8 or whatever. You know what I mean? So like when it comes to like a broader appeal for the game, and kind of like the audience, it's easier. It's kind of easier to find players. Excuse me, and easier to engage them with a system of rules around a hilarious heist or weird villain soliloquies, and Cards Against Humanity does that, right? It's just like, okay, I figured these cards, I'm an awful person, your turn. You know what I mean? And that's kind of it, which, anyone can play that. And setting the game up the heist game in that way. I just think that because I really like the concept. Like everybody knows, everybody can picture like the member of a team on a team of thieves, right? Like everybody can picture that, and so to be able to just jump into that super quickly is good, right? One of the things that I dislike about tabletop RPGs and stuff like that, the ones that I run, is character creation. As much fun as it is to do that, like the players who are new to the game, it's like, oh god, okay, so we're gonna come over and everybody expects to like play D&D tonight. Well, actually, we're not gonna do that. We're gonna be spending like an hour and a half making characters, and then we might play, right? And if your character dies, then you got 20 minutes to play, and then you got to spend another hour making another character, right? Or this one comes back from the dead, or just change his name or whatever. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I love RPGs. Like I just ran a big one last night. I run them all the time. I absolutely love them. But when it comes to, the audience for those games I feel like in my experience has to be somebody who's a willing participant in that experience, right? Like we're gonna play D&D, awesome. I'm into playing that, and they gotta get into that mindset, and they've got to bring dice, they got to prepare to like add a lot, whatever it's gonna be, right? Whereas something like a card game, you just like pick up the box, shuffle some cards, deal them out, explain it on a couple of sheets of paper how the game goes, and then go for it. It's like a magic in that simplicity.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was thinking. What I would like to preserve as far as an RPG element, anyway, is like I would like to have it continue along with like at some point you have a hand of cards or whatever, and as you play them out, it kind of describes what happens instead of so like at each card would just kind of tell you like the next thing that happens, and then you basically add two and two together to come up with a scenario type of thing. The one thing I was looking at where there was a couple of games that I was interested in the mechanics of. I don't know much about them other than some reviews that I've seen. The first one is the living card game Ashes Rise of the Phoenix Born. I don't know if any of you played it. No, it's what was interesting to me is it's like a Magic or something like that, except that it uses dice as well. Okay. So you have your monsters and then a pool of dice that you roll to. They're like your resources. So when you get whatever dice you need, then you can play a monster or whatever it is. I just like that idea because I'm just stuck on the whole Tharsis idea that I was talking about before, where you have the roles that you need to get to. But it was just something I was thinking of, and the other one was the Phoenix Dawn Command, which is basically just a role-playing game that uses cards instead of dice. And I like the ideas I just was thinking of, but like I was writing a couple of different concepts down. Like the one I was coming up with, like this is pretty basic, but the players and GM would have like their hands of cards, and kind of like creating your own deck as a whole. They're all putting their cards down like one at a time into the central pool, and that deck that they're creating becomes like the deck of things that happen or the deck of possibilities. And beyond that,
I have an idea.
so it's
if you don't mind, so if you have all the different participants in the heist playing the cards in a sequence face down, they could resolve in a sequence, and if stuff happens properly in the right order to make the heist succeed, that might be an interesting thing to play around with. Actually building time into the mechanics as you. So like the one guy has to take care of the guards, and the other guy has to take care of the alarms, and then like it all stacks up eventually, and then you get the gem at the end, and if something gets out of the stack, it all screws up.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking.
Cool.
Basically, yeah, you're putting them all down in the deck face down, and it's you have your list of like goals that have to happen. So like gather disguises, and then like crack a safe, and then distract the guards and stuff like that. So you know kind of like the order that things need to happen, and the goals you have to get for each of those things. And then as you place the cards, you try to figure them out. And what I was thinking, just trying to think of mechanics you can use to like screw around with that concept, is basically something along the lines of, say you have suits, like a regular deck of cards, and each suit is kind of based on a like diamonds could be your technical ability, hearts could be social, something like that. But you could screw around with it where something like as you go along, somebody could throw in a like a wrench into the mix, which switches the suits what they mean. So instead of it being so they could like it could rotate it one degree or something, and then all of a sudden, well, hearts aren't social anymore, they're something else. And then so all these people who are throwing hearts in to get past the social goal that they're trying to reach, they're also all of a sudden all have to do with guns,
Right.
or something like that.
So then they have to explain how they overcome the obstacle with guns. Is that the idea?
So something like that. Like I was just trying to think of ways that, because one of the things that I like the idea of is everybody trying to screw over everybody else, having their own agendas. But it's kind of hard to do that without knowing, or I'm trying to think of ways that you can do it without knowing who is the one who placed that card. The easiest way is to have, if you have a GM, he can be throwing in curveballs all the time. But if you're not shuffling cards,
I like the idea of you could have one of the players be like a mole, right? Like be a police officer or something undercover. Nobody else knows it. And everybody puts their like so at this stage of the heist, whatever is, we have to overcome this thing, and we need X diamonds, right? So this stage is like the challenge is like a technical challenge. So and the challenge is like 7. So we need like 7 diamonds in this mix. So everybody takes their cards and they put them in the pile face down, shuffle them up, and then you flip them over. It's like, okay, how many diamonds do we get? Oh shit, we got 6 diamonds and 1 like police shield or something like that. Like, oh my god, one of us is this thing and we don't know who it is, and the police officer only has, say, I'm just making this up, 3 shields that they could throw in to try to disrupt the entire thing, or whatever it's going to be. But that kind of thing, you take the cards and putting them in the pile, shuffling them, would give a way to kind of mask that. It would also have everybody else like panicking a little bit, like, oh my god, okay, one of us is actually, a imposter or whatever.
The one thing I could see happening, you mentioned the police as opposition, but something we talked about last episode was having the villains, the thieves themselves, competing and trying to knock out the other thieves. So you could have saboteurs, so like prisoner's dilemma kind of scenarios. You don't know who actually sabotaged it, but there's an incentive that if you sabotage it and it succeeds, then you get an extra reward at the end of the game.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Bigger cut.
yeah, you get a bigger cut because you stole the goods from that stage. But if you get away with it, then you get it. But they
It
don't.
makes me think of Cutthroat Caverns in the
No?
sense that the whole idea of Cutthroat Caverns is you are against everybody else, but you have to work together because otherwise things aren't gonna. You're not going to be able to beat everything
Right.
by yourself,
Yeah.
and that's a big part of that game. But that's the other thing I was thinking, because I was trying to think of ways you can mask it, because shuffling is the easiest way. Um, but I kind of also wanted to try to get it to stick to the same idea of like you pre-plan, and so you're
So
trying to do something beforehand. So there's kind of two phases. There's your planning phase where you set everything up,
I have an idea.
and then the second phase you just watch everything fall apart.
Well, I have an idea. So each phase, you separate it into each phase. So say you have 5 steps that you need to do for a successful heist. Each step is a separate pile, and that gets shuffled. So everybody contributes the cards for phase 1, which is disabling security. Phase 2 is taking out the human element. Stage 3 is getting through the physical barriers, so on and so on. So everybody has something that they need to do, but somebody could sabotage that one step.
I like the idea of the one thing that kind of is sticking out to me as a warning thing on a why is like you'd want to make the heists be kind of procedurally generated each time. It's like you don't want to have a list of like here's the 10 the 10 things in a heist all the time, right? Everybody gets to know it. I like the idea of it's a random thing that they have to overcome each time. So you just have like the checklist of steps maybe is different each time because one heist might not be the same as the next one.
That makes me think of something. If you knew sort of a bunch of things that could happen in each stage, and you have to prepare for all these things, then say like in phase 1, the guards could show up, or the alarms could go off, or this could happen, or this could happen, or this could happen. And then you plan for all those eventualities, and you should have enough resources to plan for all those eventualities. But maybe you're just short by 1. So if that thing happens to come out and everybody was up on the up and up, it could still go all sideways. But somebody could also sabotage that and say, well, I'm not contributing that card. That could be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So like say there's like an A, B, C, D, E thing that could happen. The players each somebody gets an A card, somebody gets a B card, somebody gets a C card, somebody gets a D card, nobody gets an E card. And then everybody else, all A, B, C, D, also get an X card. So player 1 has A and X, player 2 has B and X, player 3 has C and X, D and X. And then you can contribute whatever you want. If an X shows up, it goes squirrely. If an E shows up, it goes squirrely.
Mm-hmm.
Cool idea.
The other
liability there.
Yeah, the other thing I was thinking of, partially because I also like the idea, and I can't see how it would work that well. Like, not in its. I was thinking of the game. I've never heard of it until just recently, but it's apparently a really cool board game. What is it? Fast Food Magnate, I think it's called. And it's a German board game, but it's actually very light, but a very complex game. And the parts that I like about it are that you basically build a system, an infrastructure, and so you're trying to like sell burgers, and so you like basically say that people are like you're increasing people wanting to buy burgers. And so when you increase that, people can come in and say like, well, now they might want like your burgers, but now they want to buy burgers and a Coke. And so like all of a sudden burgers and Coke are really expensive, and but people don't want burgers anymore. But one of the cool things that I liked about it was that there's a big, huge mechanic of tree, like it's a tree system. So you start out with one card, and it's like the CEO, which is you. And basically that card allows you, like the action of that card is that you get to choose another card or hire another person. And so from that you can hire another person, and one of the ones that makes sense is you hire a manager, and the manager can hire two other like first level people or things like that. And it goes through where you like hire managers who hire training personnel or who hire line managers, and they hire burger flippers, and the trainer the trainer will train a specific like a gourmet chef, and it just kind of filters down through there. And I was thinking of something along that lines where you could like set up some sort of tree system in that way. But
Illuminati New World Order was a card game that had a similar sort of tree mechanic for resourcing. So you'd have properties that then had arrows that were on the edges of the four sides of the card, up to the four. Could have one, it could have all four. And so actually arranging your resources affected the gameplay of the game. It's been a long time since I played it, so I don't exactly remember how it worked. But I do remember like if you disabled something such that it couldn't reach your main player card, then nothing that was connected to could reach it either. So you could disable somebody's resources if you could infiltrate it just right. It was interesting to play with those tree mechanics. It should be easy to find a reference of some kind. Somebody actually wrote a Monopoly hack that basically is Illuminati New World Order played with a Monopoly set. It's called Illuminopoly. The rules are out there, but it's ridiculous.
Yeah, like that's it. Like I just feel like right now I'm kind of shopping mechanics and trying to see what I can do there. Like, because I still feel that there's none of it is coming together quite how I would like to think of it anyway.
The whole idea of the different stages was feeling a lot to me like Coup, or no, not Coup.
Or Avalon.
Resistance and Avalon, yeah.
Yeah.
So that kind of sort of aspect.
Yeah, I like that idea of you not knowing who's there, and that's what I was thinking. Like you could get secret missions yourself, so it's not like there's always a mole or something. You could just like draw it from the deck. It could be a mole, you could be a spy, you could just be a greedy thief, or you could be an upstanding thief that is actually trying to save his son, who is the other person to their left, or something like that.
What's the game? The zombie game. Oh, geez. It just had an expansion. What the hell is it called?
Dead Winter.
Dead of Winter, yeah.
Dead of Winter.
The roles in that are pretty cool. So you have some people that have to sabotage in a certain subtle way, and others just have a secondary goal that they get extra bonus points if they get their secondary goal. And all of them are kind of hard to tell from one another, but they screw with the resources in a way that ends up sabotaging things. That might give you some additional ideas.
Yeah, I haven't. again, I've watched reviews on it and stuff, but I haven't looked at how or any of the cards or type of things that it works with.
Very cool.
It also makes me think of Two Rooms in a Boom, just in the concept of the mechanics there. I don't know if you've heard of that one. That's a really interesting game. Basically, you just get there are two teams, red and blue, and like the red team has a bomb, and everybody else are just like red team members. And then the other team, one of them's the president, and the other people are just blue team members. And the whole idea is there's like 4 rounds, and you start out not knowing who anybody is, and you're allowed to do like a partial share, which you show your color, or a full share, which you show your color and your role. And then after it goes like 15 minutes, 7 minutes, 5 minutes, and then 1 minute. And you basically have to talk to everybody in the group. One person is voted as the leader in the group, and he chooses who is sent across. And so basically the whole idea is like you have to figure out who's on your side and figure out if anybody knows who the actual like president is or who the bomb is, and you have to try to get the bomb and the president in the same room if you're the red team, or in different rooms if you're the blue team. And the cool part about that is like that's the base game, and then they have all kinds of extras which throw in people like spies who show up as the opposite color but are actually part of the red, like the opposite team. So they'll show the card shows blue, but they're part of the red team because they're a spy. So you can partially show people your color and fake them out into thinking that. Or there's other weird, like a third party where there's one that's one's Moby Dick and Captain Ahab, and the whole idea is one of them. Each of them are trying to get the other one in the room with the bomb at the end, so they don't care about the whole red and blue. They're just trying to kill the other one. Right. And there's ones that like an alien that takes the cards from people who they share their thing with. So if somebody shares their card with the alien takes their card. And then they can use that card as like credentials for other things. And there's a whole bunch of different mechanics in that, but like I like the idea of the roles and the secrecy of it. I don't think I would do like sharing cards because I think it should stay secret till the end. But something, I don't know, I just like the concept of all kinds of different mechanics that can be thrown in. And it also adds for expansion farther along too.
Yeah, I think that's worth exploring.
Mm-hmm. But that's pretty much what I got, I think. Cool. We got plenty to go through and look at.
Very cool. Okay, Matt, how about your stuff?
My stuff since our last talk has been going well, actually. My big thing last time was like getting that motivation to kind of keep going and do stuff, and I've done that. So I'm designing my game. It has 3 factions, and I'm designing all these cards for it and stuff. And so I finished one of the factions. And so now I'm at this editing stage where I like print these cards out on kind of a 3x3 grid, and then I edit them all. I just go through each and just go like, oh, these words and stuff don't make sense, or keywords don't make sense, or whatever they are. And then once I get that done, I tend to do, or the first time I did it, I do it 2 more times, just to make sure that punctuation's the same, or like, you know, the way that I describe an effect or an event happening is consistent on all the cards. Because I design them on different days, right? So one day I might go, oh, this card does this, and then on the next day I might have another card that does the same thing, but I say it in a different way. So this editing process is me refining those and getting them all to be the same. And then I think I have one more pass to do, and then it's take them to and get them printed up on some cheap stock, or sorry, print them again, cut them out, and then I sleeve them into these like, this kind of like card sleeves sort of thing, but they're really cheap ones, the ghetto sleeves they're called. And I sleeve them with like magic cards or whatever, so that to retain the backs, the kind of rigidity that I need to shuffle. And then I'm gonna take them to around for people to play test and see how it goes. Um, it's been a fun process trying to figure out like the names of cards and exactly how I want them to be called, and I kind of write all the flavor text to keep that stuff funny and interesting, and sometimes not funny, like sometimes really serious. But I am definitely moving forward on the game. I was definitely inspired in our last chat about this stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really good. It's moving forward, that's for sure.
Good. So do you have some playtests lined up, or are you just that's the next step?
So yeah, once I get the next phase of edits done, then I'm going to print them, and then I'm going to probably going to print like maybe 4 decks or something like that. It's not very expensive to do, so I might even just take those or something like that and just get them print because they cut them for you too. So just get them to print me, cut me like 6 decks or whatever, and then I'll invite 6 people together, and then I'll give each of them a deck and I'll pit them against each other and try that out for a little while. The first thing I do is just like, all right, play the game, and then I just kind of watch and take notes and whatever, and then I'll say, okay, so I want you to play the game, but I want you to do this, right? Like try doing specifically this, like try to draw a ton of cards or try to whatever, and then watch that and write that stuff down, and then eventually I get to the point. This is what happened last time. I eventually get to a point where it's like, okay, this is cool. We've played 1-on-1, but let's play like 4 people now, and see what happens with a larger multiplayer game. See if the game breaks. See if it's one of the editing things, right? The cards can't say like your opponent does this, right? It has to be like an opponent does this, right? So that if people do decide to play the game with more than 2 players, then the effects still trigger. So yeah, it's basically it'll be like let's get together at say 10 in the morning, and I'll buy lunch, I'll get some pizza or whatever, and we'll just play the game until like dinner time, and then once that's done and once I'm happy with that, we might edit cards like on the spot, but then it'll be then I will work through the second faction. I've started working on them slowly, and then once I'm done with the second faction, then we'll do the exact same thing. And then once I'm done with the third faction, we'll do the exact same thing. And then it'll be like, okay, I got 3 factions. The cards will work together, and then they'll be tested individually, right? Like each faction will be tested head to head, and so then I'll go, okay, let's pit them against each other. So I foresee a lot of playtesting, but I like a lot of playtesting. I like one of the cool things that happened the last time I rolled out a playtest was players at different times discovered like 2 or 3 combos that were in the game that I didn't know. One was like, one player was like, oh, if I play this, will that cause this to happen? And the way the card was written was an editing thing, and it was ambiguous as to whether or not that effect could actually happen. And I just was like, that's an amazing effect. It absolutely does. So then I just edited the card on the spot, and then we played it as though that's how it has always been. So there's a few times where the players like have surprised me and discovered things. I did a survey and I asked the players like, "What's your favorite card? Or what's the card you hate the most?" Or what kind of wishy-washy on. And the one of the cards that people liked the most and the card that people didn't like the most was the same card, which I thought was a good thing. Usually the cards that people don't like, or the card that some people didn't like, had like a negative effect on you. Like the first time you play Magic or whatever, it's like, why do I want to play a card where I lose life, right? Why do I want a card where whatever? It doesn't make sense, so I'm never going to play this card. And then eventually you come around and you're like, oh, it's because you get incredible value for losing a life or whatever, right? So in this case, the players who hadn't played games like this before, the card like punished you for playing it. So they're like, why would I play this card? Like, this is so dumb. And then other people would say, it's one of my favorite cards because I realized that I can do this, or that it combos with this card, so I really, really like it. So that's one of the things I'm looking forward to in playtests. Either players like finding cool combos or finding that things are broken, and then I'll be able to go, cool, let's fix this and keep trying.
Cool. I have a really boring question for you.
Sure.
So when you mentioned picking up lunch and stuff for the playtesters,
Yeah.
do you keep track of all your expenditures and associate it with the project, including your time and all that stuff, so that you figure out how much the game has costed you over time?
I don't. The In terms of like my time and stuff, like I don't. I'm not doing anything anyway, so like the time that I spend on the game is just like, whatever. Once the game becomes like a thing, that's actually like, okay, this is actually beyond this kind of playtesting thing. I do roughly write down things like, the amount of time the game has been playtested. So it's like, okay, the game has been playtested for like 26 hours so far. That kind of a thing, just to kind of have that knowledge. I do that, but I don't like if I sit down with Google Docs open and I spend a couple hours going through card lines and tweaking edits and stuff like that. Usually, I don't really pay attention to that. In terms of the money and stuff that I spend on like snacks and stuff, I haven't done that yet. I probably would just write that down and just have that in my pocket just for knowledge.
It's probably a good idea to track that kind of stuff, including like material costs, like paper, printing, making playtest materials, buying food for people. Like when it becomes more of a real project, real product, it is a real project. More of a released product is what I really meant. Then it gives you a closer idea towards your R&D valuation. Like how much, even if you keep the material expenditures separate from your time expenditures, it's still a good idea to track all that stuff, because then you know how much effort has been put into this product. And if you say, for instance, full-time salary, like if you could put a number on the time that you've spent on it, you know, like in terms of like, if you think of Hollywood budgets, right? This is why movies cost millions of dollars, is because everybody gets paid because everything's under a guild, right? So knowing how much your time is worth helps you evaluate the product and how much time and effort you're spending on R&D. Even if that information doesn't go anywhere, if you're getting better, for instance, on subsequent products and things like that. The other part of it is a lot of that stuff, at least in Canadian tax law, you can write off all that shit. So you can all the material costs, definitely you can get reimbursed. The other stuff is a little bit more difficult, but you like SR and ED stuff we do all the time at the day job, and like you can get so much of that back. It's harder to do when you're not a corporation, but keeping track of that means that you have a chance of getting some of it back. If you, for instance, if you sell the product to some corporation, you're like, well, it cost me this much in R&D. This is the price for this product. This is how much it took.
That's a good idea.
It's just not a bad idea to keep track of it, and the worst that happens is you have more information that you never use.
Right. That's a good idea. I've been recording, not that, but I've been recording ever since I started working on the project. I've been recording mini audio podcasts about the process of it. What I'll do is I'll take my phone, turn it into record mode, and just as I'm driving to work or driving home from work, I'll get like an idea about it. So I'll say like, okay, so to me it's this day. I'm thinking about, the names of things, right? Like, or I'm thinking about like, things that aren't even, players will never even encounter, but things like the game takes place in this place called the city. So I'm thinking about regions of the city, right? And just like, okay, so here's some regions of the city that I thought of. These could be cool, like areas that the that the flavor text references, right, and kind of a side thing. And if the game ever becomes something, then it would be cool to like have that kind of behind the scenes, those behind the scenes recording of the development process.
Yeah, it's very cool.
I think I like maybe a little bit.
Mm.
I've attempted to do that on multiple occasions. Never done it. Always turns into listening to audiobooks or something on the way to work.
Yeah, usually I do it between, like, when I'm between, I've listened to all the podcasts that I listen to. It's like, okay, nothing new's in, so let's think about this. Or just sometimes I get on a streak, right, where it's just, okay, I have some cards and I don't like what they're named. Here's what they're called, and then I'll just like brainstorm out some ideas, as I'm driving. I've always talked aloud to myself, so assuming get some value out of it, that would be good.
Cool.
But yes, come along.
Are there any other specific things that you wanted to talk about there, Matt?
Think of anything right now? Off the top of my head, no. But
Well, then I'll rah, go Matt, make your prototypes.
prototypes.
And technically, we all live in the London area, so
Yeah.
if you need playtesters,
For sure, I will definitely do that. I have the last time I did it, I had it at the Game Chamber here in the city, and I got 40 decks printed, and I brought 20 people together. I brought a deck for each person, and everybody just sat down and played. We took over the whole back room of the Game Chamber. I posted a bunch of photos on the Facebook page, and
cool.
it was like people from all ages playing and all like levels of they played card games before, or haven't or whatever. So it was cool to get a wide range of people. And the Game Chamber is a great place to play this. Tim's awesome. You go in there. Like I just went in and I said I want to try to do this, and I'm going to try to bring 20 people to the store. He was like, "Sounds amazing. Like, let's do it." So he didn't charge me to do that. Like, he didn't charge me for the space, and we took it over for kind of like from noon till 5, I think. So it's a great place to gamer friendly. It's a great place to play test stuff.
specifically for London things, I saw that Cardboard Cafe has like a game dev night every Thursday, which
Yeah.
I've never heard of, and I was just wondering if you guys have ever heard about it or looked into it.
All I know is that one of the guys that works there made that
Chronos?
made a card game called start with a K.
Yeah. It's
K
like
Kronos or something. I don't know.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that might be part of it. I don't know who's participated in it.
Yeah, I just saw it and I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I like the idea of that. I like the idea of what we used to do kind of for video games and stuff. We did our Hello My Gamers event, and I think it'd be cool to do like a, and maybe that's what they're doing there, which is some sort of like get game developers to come out and bring prototypes. They have had them at there before, at Cardboard Cafe before, and I've gone and played a lot of rough prototypes, but I haven't done it in a while. The people there there's usually like 3 or 4 prototypes max. Not a limit set by anybody. It's just who brings games to try.
Mm.
And then there's usually like 2 to 3 or 4 people play each prototype, and then they kind of do what we're doing, where they kind of sit down and they talk about, I like this, I didn't like this, this is really confusing. This card had a rule on it, and they were like, yeah, I know. I remember this one game I was playing. It has a rule on it, and there's like a rule that's like, if you get this card, you have to give it to somebody else. But the way that the card was written, it hadn't been edited very well. So the card was, even though the overall rule said if you get this card, you have to do X, this card basically said, if you get this card, do X or Y or something like that. So I had it, and at the end of the game, they were like, okay, who had that card? And I was like, I had the card. They said, well, you're supposed to turn that in. And I said, yeah, the card says to not do that, or it says it's ambiguous as to what it does. And they were like, oh, okay. Like, I didn't, it's just something that they didn't realize, like it. So that, that kind of thing happens, which is pretty cool. But it's a good event, especially like you bring some prototypes. People who go there, some people are like have published lots of games before, and other people have published like no games. Like some people are like handing out prototypes, kind of trembling, because it's like it's pretty nerve wracking to give somebody your baby to drive it into the ditch, maybe. But everybody's always positive and always super friendly, so it's a good time. You can have a good out there for sure.
Yeah, I feel like I'm in a weird spot. I've published so many video games, but never an analog one.
It's a good platform to start with, though.
Yeah.
Understand the concepts of games, which is important.
Yeah, it's fun. I like tabletop a lot.
Mm-hmm. It's grown on me too. Board game. I'm getting a pretty big collection of board games, and I have to stop buying Kickstarter role-playing games.
The last Kickstarter I bought was about that Penny Arcade Thornwatch game that they were working on.
How was it?
It's I didn't play it at PAX, but I like sat and watched people play it and was like asking tons of questions and stuff. It's a very cool concept. It's like a graphic novel kind of that you're playing, and the story kind of gets told by the game master. The game master will like play a card that like augments abilities or moves creatures or does whatever. It's a very cool concept of the game. So,
very cool.
We started ended I think 2 weeks ago.
Well, I've been sending Andy like all kinds of Kickstarters that I'm trying to get him to buy instead of me.
Man, that Kickstarter site, I had to like basically I put a moratorium on my Kickstarter. Like okay, you can back, your budget for the year is like $200. You know what I mean? So you can back $200 worth of anything on Kickstarter, right? So this Thornwatch game, the level that I backed it at, I backed it at 200. So I was like, all right, that's my game for the year. I hope it doesn't suck. It won't, but you know what I mean. But if I don't, like, it's like, oh, I like this, or here's a new way to hold a phone, or you know what I mean, like all this weird stuff that you back.
Yeah, so I had to set a budget definitely, but I had a professional membership that I don't use, sort of like a gym membership.
Okay.
That I also didn't use. So the plan is that I'm going to cancel that membership and then use that for Kickstarter.
Nice.
Yeah, that makes sense. I keep getting sucked into role-playing games that the art looks amazing. Like Shinobigami was one that I wanted to get because the art in it looks awesome, and then basically just an anime. And then the one I was looking at just recently is the Cities of Mist, which I really like the art aesthetic of that too.
I use the Remind Me Later thing on Kickstarter a lot.
Yeah.
It gives me some time to think about things. It's like, you have 48 hours. It's like, I'm over it.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I still want that one. It helps.
Mm-hmm. But it's also awesome to think that it's that easy to put together a Kickstarter. Because like I've been talking to artists and stuff, just seeing like getting an idea of how much it would take to get some promo art or something that you could make a Kickstarter with enough to be able to put together something that looks nice, and then if I needed to get the rest of the art or something together, it would work, which is good research anyway. I feel like every time even if I don't finish a project that I've started, I've started I don't know how many video games, the ideas get put on the back shelf, and then I'll return to them later, and each time I get a bit farther and a bit farther, and usually when I start something else, I learn about something, and then when I go back to another project, I can get a bit farther. It's hard for me to continue on. I always get distracted, but the problem is I have my mind goes wandering in different directions, and then I try to do other
That's
things.
why I switched up to the new villain's monologue idea. It's like, well, I need to investigate these the seance idea and the cabin idea, but I need to build a proof of concept software prototype to see if it actually even works. So I need another idea to work on.
Nice.
I just saw an article that you might be interested in. It was on a guy bought a like professional poker it was a poker cheating system,
Okay.
and it works for any card game apparently, and it works through the decks have to be marked, but it's like super high tech. It's basically a smartphone that has been edited. They added a chip to it that converts the like an IR port. I can't remember if it was like a camera. It's like a hidden camera on the side of the phone that like just takes snapshots of the cards as they're being shuffled or whatever. So you put the phone on the table, and it basically can track where all the cards are and tell you like what cards are going to come up at the top. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Well, I think this has been GMParty number 3.
It's great.
Does anybody have any last words before we sign off?
Your game sounds awesome.
Yeah, I agree.
All the games sound awesome. I definitely want to try them all.
Cool.
Okay. See you.
All right, guys.
All right.
Guys.
Thank you so much.
See you.
Thank you.